Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gents. Another week, another episode of The Last of Us has landed, and this one yet again is full of emotion, full of character building. Not too much action in this one, but that's okay. We're going to go into details of the episode, my thoughts and feelings about the episode, how I felt, where I think it's going, and whether it was good or bad. But before we go any further, guys, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video, subscribe as well if you're brand new to the channel. Why not hit the bell icon as well on the channel homepage, and you'll be notified when episode 7 goes live. And don't forget, if you've missed any of the other prior episodic reviews of The Last of Us, feel free to go and check out. Each one is going to be linked in the description of this video down below. Okay, so without further ado, episode 6 is called Kin. It's an hour-long episode. We are going to go into spoilers, so you've been warned. Come back at a later time if you haven't yet watched the episode, but we're going to dive straight in. So we're 3 months on from episode 5. We get a very brief sort of recap scene where we see Henry shooting Sam in cold blood. No, it wasn't cold blood. He had to do what he had to do, arguably. But shooting Sam and then shooting himself. We then fast forward 3 months on, nicely detailed on the opening section of the screen, and we see a hunting lodge. We see a weird old lady in a rocking chair. Joel is behind the scenes, and some guy comes back with some nice rabbits that he's just hunted. As he walks in, Joel sort of makes himself known, and then it's clear that he's actually trying to sort of half interrogate this couple about how to get to Tommy. And obviously we're near Wyoming now, and he's trying to locate where Tommy is. So he doesn't give much away, and he asks them about how to get to this place that he's heard of, this fortress, this city that's built within a wall. And the guy's kind of like, you don't want to go there. And Joel's like, oh, I do. It's my brother. I need to find him. You've ever heard of him? Have you ever seen him? And the guy's like, no. And then Joel says, you don't even know what he looks like. And the guy was like, does he look like you? Joel's like, yeah, a little bit. And he says, well, I haven't seen him. So there's a little bit of a fun interaction, and there's sprinkles of humor throughout the whole episode. I really, really enjoyed it. As I said, there wasn't much action in this one. There wasn't much. I don't think we saw any infected. There was no sort of gunfights. There was no craziness. There was a little bit of a scuffle at the end, but all in all, this was very much a dialogue and character building episode. And for the direction team to go on a whole hour, basically, with no action, just basic, not I say basic dialogue, basically just dialogue, but the way that the scenes are delivered, the way that the characters sort of go within themselves and become the characters in the TV show is amazing. There is not a dull moment, I feel, for me in this episode. I think the script is brilliant. Again, they're lifting a lot of stuff out of the game and they're putting it onto the big screen, which is amazing. Why mess with that original material if it's great, if it's juicy, if it's sexy? Because it is. So don't touch it. And that's exactly what they've done here. They haven't messed with it. And I'm glad to see that they haven't tinkered with the best bits. There's a couple of little bits that they've sprinkled in, which we'll go on to in a second. But going back to how the episode opens, so we're in the lodge. Ellie's upstairs. Joel's like, don't come down. She comes down anyway. It's Ellie. She does what she wants to do. And gives the guy a little bit of shit. Starts swearing. And the guy's like, oh, wow, you got like a live one here. What's going on? Doesn't give much away to the couple about what he's up to. We then leave the lodge. They basically say to them, don't go west of the river. It means death. Whatever that means. Ellie's like, oh, death. Let's go and find out. As she does. Joel's like, oh, we need to be careful. As they get outside, they start talking about the fireflies. And Joel goes through one of many sort of PTSD type moments in this episode where he sort of relapses a little bit in his own emotion. He remembers what happened to Sarah. He's obviously digesting what happened to Tess still. It's still very raw. And he's also got a heavy burden on his shoulders now. This girl essentially is the key to reversing this infection, to creating a vaccine and essentially saving the world. And Joel's just one guy, and he's got that burden. And in his mind, he's obviously thinking, I let my daughter down, Sarah died. I let down Tess, she's dead. I lost Tommy, and now I've been given arguably the heaviest burden possible in this situation. And he's feeling the weight of it. So all that encompassed on the fact that he's still trying to go through his emotions as a dad. He's lost one of his best friends. At this point, until sort of midway through the episode, he's lost his brother. Doesn't know if he's alive or not. And he's sort of battling that within himself as well. So he sort of clasps his chest. It looks like he's having like a heart attack of sorts. But he's literally going through a sort of PTSD moment. Ellie asks, is everything all right? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. Just need to process myself. It's just the cold air. Kind of goes for the whole sort of male excuses or, manning up and all that sort of thing, where he's just sort of saying, I'm okay. It's just the air and I'm fine. When actually he is really, really struggling. It then sort of fast forwards to a campfire chat where we've got Ellie. Joel's sort of swigging what I assume is whiskey out of a sort of canister. And Ellie says, oh, let me have a go on that. And Joel's like, absolutely not. And she's like, oh, come on, just to keep me warm. So he lets her have a go. And what I really like between these two actors is they've got such a chemistry. And then if you look at some of the interviews that they've done off screen, even when they're hyping up the series or they've attended premieres and stuff like that, or they're just being interviewed by presenters, they've got such a natural chemistry with each other. They're very fun, they're very bubbly. It literally feels like a father and daughter combo, cracking jokes at each other, sort of taking pot shots at each other, but also having fun with it as well. They can both take a joke, their humour is great, and that is really reflecting onto our screens. And I think the casting is absolutely brilliant. As I said in many of episodes before where I was reviewing The Last of Us, I was really worried about Bella Ramsey. Not that she's a shit actress, absolutely the opposite, but I just couldn't see her fit in the shoes of Ellie. Ellie is a very complex, out there, sort of widely spoken, in-your-face character. Joel is kind of easy to carry off. He's quite reserved, he's quite grumpy. We've seen it done a million times by different actors in different sort of set-in scenarios. But Ellie is a very different type of character, and I was really worried because I never, until this point, really saw what Bella Ramsey is capable of. And I'm glad to say she has put my worries to ease. She's doing Ellie justice. She's given Ellie her own little spin. She comes across so natural as Ellie, and I don't know if she's probably having some great fun with it and coming out with all these lines, this dialogue, just acting as a kid basically, and doing what she does best, I assume. But it's just really nice to see that the characters we hold dear in this franchise are being given to us on a silver plate, in great fashion, in a fun and entertaining way. And I'm so glad that worry I had about, is she going to pull off Ellie? Ellie's a bit out there. Ellie's a bit crazy. She comes out with these one-liners. She's quite diverse as a character. And her character arc from the beginning of the game right up until the end of the first game, and then from part 2 all the way through part 2 to the end, she changes so much, and I just couldn't see sort of the acting scale almost of what Bella could do. But she is fantastic. She's a great actress, and hats off to her. It was such a great cast and such a great move. So hopefully we're going to get more of these episodes. There's only 3 left, so there's 9 episodes in total in this season. I've also heard that one of the episodes, I think it's going to be episode 8, so the one after this next one, is going to be based on the DLC, so the Left Behind DLC from the first game, where Ellie sort of interacts with another character. I'm not going to spoil it too much if you haven't played it, because it could ruin episode 8 for you. But there's going to be a moment where Ellie has an interaction with a character. There's DLC. If you guys have played the DLC, you'll know what happens, and I imagine it's going to be sort of a replica of that, but they're going to put that in as episode 8. So I'd imagine episode 10 is where it's all going to kick off, and it's all going to come to a head as it does at the end of the game. Back in the room. So, campfire chat, Ellie's swigging the whiskey. We get a very great relationship building scene again. This is heavy in this episode, guys. It's loads and loads of Joel and Ellie interaction. Loads of great dialogue. They take the piss out of each other. The acting's fantastic. The lines that they come across, the dialogue, it's quirky. Joel even is now opening up massively, starting to explain himself to Ellie a bit more in terms of how he's feeling emotionally. He's starting to crack jokes himself. He's starting to laugh. He's starting to smile. He's starting to get involved in some of the comedy, and it's nice to see how much of an influence Ellie has had on Joel in such a short space of time, really. So it's great to see that character arc, and that's exactly how it plays out in the game. They're warm with each other. They're such a great sort of, as I said, father and dad combo. They feel like family, and this is probably why this episode is called Kin, because it's all about the kin of the episode. So jumping ahead a little bit, Joel reunites with Tommy in this episode. He also sort of sees that Tommy has kind of moved on a bit. He's kind of gone off, made himself a little home in this new place. He's met someone called Maria who he's infatuated with, and they're together. And they're talking about a baby, and they're talking about fatherhood, and Joel's kind of a bit pissed off with that, because he's kind of like, well, you've left me behind. And Tommy politely reminds him that he didn't have to give up his life just because Joel's life ended, which is kind of bittersweet. It's true, but it's a straight kick in the balls for Joel, because he's trekked halfway across the country to try and find him, and just to be told, actually, it's, you know, I'm not going to stop living my life, I'm happy, so you do what you need to do. It's kind of a kick in the teeth, but it's also true. What Tommy says to him is also true. They talk about sort of the past times, they talk about Sarah, they talk about Tess. But I'm going ahead of myself a little bit, but this is kind of what happens in this episode. It's all about relationship building. It's all about family. It's all about the great dialogue, the great interactions. There's some funny scenes in there. Great jokes, great little one-liners. There's a scene specifically that I'll talk about that happens towards the end of the episode, where Joel is showing Ellie how to use the rifle that Tommy gives him. And it's comical. It's so good. And I think the acting, the script, the way it's delivered, the cinematography, the production of the scenes themselves, the set pieces, it ticks all the boxes, guys. It's another strong episode. I really enjoyed it. Couple of little things that I could have been sprinkled in there to make it perfect, but I think all in all, very pleased. Came away with another smile on my face. And like I said, considering this is an hour long and we didn't get hardly any, I don't think there was, bar the one scene near the end where there's a little bit of a scuffle, and a little bit of a drama, we don't get any infected scenes, we don't get any gunfights, we don't get any tension, any craziness that we've had with the bloaters and things in the last episodes, the clickers. We don't get any of that here. This is all about family, the relationships, and the effect that the virus has had both on their everyday lives, past, present and future, and I assume that's why they called it kin. So we go back to Joel and Ellie, and as I said, we're at the campfire, and Ellie's like, what do you want to get? If this all plays out, I save the world, I give my blood, and they make a vaccine. What's next for you? And Joel's kind of like, well, I always envision myself being on a ranch, having lots of sheep. And Ellie talks about going to the moon. She's obsessed with astronauts. She talks about a famous astronaut. It evades me, Sally something. It evades me what the astronaut's name is. But Ellie talks about going to the moon, going into space. That's her passion. And Joel he just wants an easy life. He wants a nice ranch, he wants some sheep, and Ellie takes the piss out of him for it. And he's like, they talk about who's gonna sort of keep watch, and Joel says, have sweet dreams, dream of sheep on the moon and stuff like that. So even in that sense, he's talking about them both being a pair. He's talking about their dreams being shared, that they're going to share the same reality, and it's just nice. I think subconsciously as a character, he doesn't realize that he's saying that, but it already shows us that connection is there, and he's opened up massively compared to the first time he met Ellie, but also the episodes following that, where he was very reserved, told her very little, said to her, don't touch this, don't do that, don't use that gun, don't talk to me, you're not funny. That, he was very much closed door, whereas now we're seeing the Joel and Ellie from the mid to late game, where it's booming, they're taking the piss out of each other, they're having fun as much as possible, they got each other's back, and it's a strong bond, a kinship. So Ellie kind of opens up to Joel a little bit. So she says to him, what if the vaccine doesn't work? And she says about how she tried to save Sam in the prior episode. She thought that if she rubbed her blood on his bite, on his wounds, that it would cure him. And she's like, I know it was silly, And Joel kind of reassures her. He says, I've done some silly stuff as well. I did things that I thought was going to save the people that I cared about, and it turned out that I didn't. They died. It's not your fault. So it was nice that Joel kind of reflected that to her as well, because I think he healed himself a little bit through saying that. We then get some amazing dialogue. We see the dam as well, which is a centerpiece of the game. Lots of action happens around the dam. We briefly skip over it, which is a shame, but I understand why they moved past it quite quickly, because this episode was really all about the functionality of the characters, the development of the relationships. I get all that. And the focus was, as I said, kinship, family, friends, the bonds that matter ultimately. But it would have been nice to get something in the dam, even if it's just a very brief episode, a very quick interaction with some infected, a little bit of tension in there. So that's why I'm going to knock the episode down a peg or two, because the dam is quite prominent in the game. But that's just my personal gripe. You guys might feel differently. You might think, actually, Jay, you're nitpicking. And I probably am, but it's just something of, the dam, that's where that happens, and this is going to happen. And we didn't get it. They literally just walked straight past it. And Ellie's like, oh, look, a dam. And then they just casually struck past. So it annoyed me a little bit, but I quickly got over it. And then the next thing you know, they're walking into the open field and they get surrounded by a group of people. It looks like Red Dead Redemption all of a sudden. There's loads of cowboys on horses turning up. This one guy says to him, drop your gun on the floor. And Joel's like, look, we're just passing through. We don't mean anything. They've also got a dog with them that apparently is able to sniff out the virus. So here we get a little bit of an issue because we know Ellie has been bitten a couple of times. While she hasn't turned, there's a strong chance the virus is in her blood. But I assume, find out here that it's not in her blood because the dog goes to Joel, sniffs out Joel absolutely fine. And then the guy's like, hang on, I want her sniffed as well. And the dog sort of casually sort of growls, walks towards Ellie. She kind of looks at Joel as if to say, fucking help. Joel just freezes. And he talks about and I assume it's PTSD. He talks about freezing with Tommy later on in multiple occasions where he feels he could have done something, i.e. test Sarah, and he just stood there, and he does the same here with Ellie. Just freezes in fear, panics, bless him, the PTSD takes over, and he can't move, he just sort of freezes, doesn't know what to do or say. So, a little bit of tension. We obviously know, if you've played the game, the dog's not going to maul Ellie to death, although you can actually get murdered by dogs in the game, but you get a nice little continue if you do. But the dog doesn't go for Ellie, just sort of casually walks up to her, and then all of a sudden, Joel comes back to, snaps back to it, looks over, and he sees that Ellie is having fun, laughing and playing. The dog is wagging its tail. She's all happy, laughing with the dog, and then all is well. But Joel feels like a bit of a dick for not, again, reacting, not doing anything, and he talks to Tommy about this very shortly after this scene. So they then get taken back to the town because one of the people says, what is your purpose? You say you're passing through, what for? Joel's like, I'm looking for my brother. And the woman clocks who he is, and she says, who's your brother? Who's he? And he says, Tommy. Obviously, they know who Tommy is. Give them some horses. They all gallop full steam back to the town, the village, the fort, whatever you want to call it. I think it has got a place, but I forget what it's a name for the place, but I forget what it's called. They get back, and we get a very nice emotional scene where they walk Joel to Tommy, who is working on a building of sort. He's putting some sort of scaffolding up or something on the building, helping repair something, and they are finally reunited. So Tommy and Joel are back together. Very emotional embrace, great acting. Very little is said initially. They just sort of look at each other in disbelief that they're actually there together, brothers reunited. They have a nice little hug, and it's all very emotional. So we get that. We then fast forward to a scene where they're being fed, basically. Joel and Ellie's having their first warm meal in God knows how long. Ellie starts reeling off about the food. Joel's like, oh, thank you, ma'am, and all this for putting up with us. And he's talking to Maria, who is, I assume, Tommy's now future wife / girlfriend. She's kind of head counselor. She's part of this group, if you like, who oversee the running of the place. Kind of like a mini government. And Joel's just kind of like, thank you so much for taking us in. We appreciate the food. And Ellie's like, yeah, the food's fucking amazing. And Joel's like, I'm so sorry. And he's already given it the dad side eye of, don't swear. We're in, a public space. We're with people we don't know. It's polite manners, table manners, all that kind of thing that you don't just start swearing when you like. So he's already got Ellie on that sort of wave where he's putting her in her place when he has to. It's that father and daughter relationship. This is where Tommy opens up about being with Maria. Joel kind of says to Tommy, looks at Maria first and says, can you just give us a bit of time? I need some family time. We appreciate everything you've done, but can you just let family talk? And Tommy kind of looks at Maria. Maria looks at him, and Tommy's like, well, actually, she kind of is family. Puts his hand on her and says, she's with me now, and we're talking about children and stuff like that, fatherhood. And Joel's like, what the fuck? Gets a bit aggy about it. I think reality is now finally hit him where the world does continue to turn. He is still obviously stuck in the past for good reason. He hasn't moved on from a lot of the events that's traumatized him. But Tommy is very clearly moved on, is happy, and is kind of adjusted to the new life. Whereas Joel is like, yeah, you shouldn't be. You're still my brother. You should still be here with me doing this, doing that, worrying about how we're going to solve stuff and how the past still should be affecting you, basically. Tommy moved on, Joel hasn't, is the bottom line. We then get a little tour around the community. They walk around the whole place. They show them there's like fucking cinemas there. There's like sheep, there's ranches, you name it, it's got it. There's a bar. It's crazy. It's like a fully functional city, and it's all running off of the dam. So we know what happens in the game. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there is about to be an issue. But anyway, You could probably assume what's going to happen, but it's all powered by the dam. Just remember that. And then we get a scene with what we see here. I'm trying to point it out correctly on the screen. This is the scene we now get here in the bar where Tommy serves up a nice cold one, whiskey on the rocks with Joel, and they talk about past times. Joel kind of says, you know, where's this Firefly base? He opens up to Tommy about the reasons why he has to take Ellie. Doesn't tell him at first because Tommy's quite reserved. He says to Joel, you know, you don't need to go there. Why are you doing it? It's just a girl. And Joel's like, I need to do it for good reason. Tommy then asks Joel about Tess. How's Tess? Joel's like, yeah, she's okay. She's fine. So he's lied about Tess. She's obviously dead. We know that she's dead. We saw her die. And Joel just says to Tommy, now she's all right. When actually she's been chewed to pieces and blown to absolute dog meat. But anyway, that's how he's dealing with it right now. So we get a little chat between the two. As I said, Joel asks about the Firefly base, and then Tommy shows about his life with Maria, talks about that. We then get a scene where Ellie and Maria are having a bit of a back and forth. Ellie kind of is missing that mother figure, and Maria sort of briefly steps in, gives her clean clothes, feeds her, gives her like a menstrual cup, shows her how to use it. There's a little instruction manual that she leaves on the bed for her when she comes out of the shower, shows her how to use it, and Ellie's like playing with it going, oh cool, that's what that does. Which is kind of sad because she's never been shown those sorts of things, which obviously you would get from your parents, your siblings or whatever, but Ellie's not grown up in that environment, so Maria kind of steps in and gives her that motherly advice as she needs. So she sort of points out to Ellie, saying, you know, who's cut your hair, and Ellie's like, oh, the amazing salons that are across the world, and, you know, does the age-old Ellie thing of saying it's all good. Maria sits Ellie down, gives her a little trim off the edges, and she kind of tries to warn Ellie about Joel, and Ellie's like, you don't know what you're talking about. And she said, no, Joel's trouble, he's this, he's that, you don't know what he's like. And then he's like, he used to kill people, I know, and Tommy used to do it as well, did you not know that? So they have a little bit of a to-do, but Ellie essentially stands up for herself and Joel, and Maria kind of respects her by the end of the scene as well. So she kind of tests the waters and just tries to find out a bit more about what Ellie's purpose is, why she's with Joel. She said, you know, people are going to talk, what's going on? What's the purpose? Where's he taking you? And Ellie's like, none of your fucking business, basically. They have an honest heart-to-heart about it. And then we cut back to Joel talking to Tommy, and he tells Tommy finally about Ellie being bitten. Says that she hasn't turned, she's been bitten a few times. Tommy's like, what the fuck? Like, how could you bring her in here? Why did the dog pick it up? And Joel's like, exactly. She is the key to all of this. She's the key to reversing it and actually potentially saving the world, creating a vaccine. So Tommy says that he can't go with Joel. His life is here. He's needed here. Joel's kind of pissed at him for it. But Tommy says, you know what? I'll do you a solid. I'll give you a horse. I'll tell you where it is. And all is well. Joel's like, fuck me. So he gets a bit pissy. Ellie then kind of gets worried because Joel says to Ellie, you could just stay with Tommy. You don't have to do any of this. You don't have to go and do this. You don't have to go and do that. You'll be safer with Tommy as well. You've got such a life here. I could just drop you here. I can leave and just say that I've never seen you. I lost you or you died. Ellie's like, no, I've got a purpose. So she sticks to what she really believes in. She's now starting to really believe, after that conversation in the beginning of the episode with Joel, that she is the key and she should believe in her own success. And she's really believing that now because she's convincing Joel that he still needs to be with her. She said, I can't go anywhere without you. I need you to guide me. What am I supposed to do? Like, you know, it's your job essentially as well. She throws all the points at him that he should stick with her and they should not split up. Whereas Joel was kind of like, you're safer here. You've got a nice sort of fortress. You'll be protected. No one's going to harm you. You can actually live out a fairly normal life. And Ellie's like, nah, I don't want that. I need to do what I need to do. So Joel kind of says, no, we're going our separate ways. By the morning, he changes his mind. Ellie kind of says, mate, you're a dick. You need to listen to me. You've gone through so much together and we need to stick together. That's what we're here for. She then makes a decision to stay with Joel. Joel stays with her and he's like, fine. He knows that he can't convince Ellie to do something she doesn't want to do. So Tommy sees this back and forth, says, look, here's a horse, off you go. This is where it is. Follow the map, stick to this route, go off at this junction, all that sort of thing, and you'll be fine. And then he gives gives them both one horse to share, gives them supplies to go away with the backpack, all their little trinkets, and Joel says, can I borrow that rifle? Tommy's like, yeah, sure, go for it. Gives Joel the rifle, and then we get a couple of scenes where it sort of clips between Joel and Ellie sort of moving through days, I imagine weeks, where they're traveling on the horse. They're just talking about general day-to-day stuff, everything from sort of football to animals to the pandemic, the epidemic, whatever you want to call it. Also, like Ellie being bitter, and they go through everything. They talk about Joel's past. He talks a little bit about Sarah. So they're really just opening up to each other through the whole episode, and then we just get glimpses of that continuing as they're moving away from Tommy's little setup to try and find the Firefly camp. We then get a scene where this is my favourite scene of the whole episode. We get towards the end, and then we get a scene where Joel is practicing with the rifle, and he's showing Ellie how to use it, because Ellie keeps saying to Joel, let me have a go on that rifle, let me do this, let me do that, and he's like, no. Tommy then talks about brags a little bit how he can pick off infected from half a mile away, and Joel's like, that's bullshit, you can't do that. So there's that brotherly competition there. He takes the rifle, and then secretly he's probably thinking, I'm gonna have a fucking go. Is he talking shit? Like, I'm gonna test this. Can I hit something from half a mile away? And he does. Ellie sort of tries the age-old approach, just aim, shoot. Oh, I can't hit. There's something wrong with the rifle. Joel's like, look, you're doing it wrong. He says to her, you've got to hold it like this. You've got to squeeze the trigger slowly, deep breath in, deep breath out, level it, think of the wind speed, think of this. And Ellie's like, look, are you going to shoot that thing, or are you going to impregnate it? And she's talking about, because he's so compassionate and delicate with the rifle, and he says it's a mastery, basically. It's a technique, whereas she just thinks you hold the bloody thing, load it, aim it, point it down the scope, and then just fire, and it should kill something. But she's like, no, I'm not getting it. It's just firing off at all angles. I'm not doing it. There's something wrong with the rifle. It's a dud. And Joel's like, look, you're doing it wrong. She's not having it. And there's a really funny scene where she sort of says, are you impregnating the target? Are you going to hit with the rifle? And then he's kind of like, bang, hits it square on, straight in the middle where it says asshole. And she sort of looks at him and says, like, you're a dick. And Joel's like, gives a little smirk and gives a little nod as if to say, see, you need to listen sometimes. So again, we get another character building scene, great relationship building. Their character arcs are great, and I think they've gone through so much of a transition from the start of the series where they were essentially at each other's throats. They didn't get on, whereas now, look at them, they're blooming. They are kin, they are family now. It's the connection that you see, like I said, between a father and a daughter, even brother and sister. They're solid. They're absolutely solid. They're both honest. They both got each other's back. They trust each other now, and it's great to see the comedy flowing. As the same experience you get if you play the game. If you guys have already played the game, you know what I'm talking about. It's a chemistry that builds up over a long time, and they essentially end up being family. And when you play as Joel in the game, you really do want to protect Ellie. She's not one of those sort of protagonists in the game where you think, fuck, I can't be bothered, she's annoying, get out of the way, she doesn't do anything. You actually do want to really protect Ellie in the game. And the sections where you get to play as Ellie, or even in part 2 of The Last of Us, you want to protect Joel as well. You kind of want them to stick together. You want them to be a team. You want them to do well. And that's all through the dialogue, the interactions, and the scenarios they've been put in, and essentially how they both handle it and carry each other through it as well. So another amazing scene. Really, really funny. And then we get the scene where we end up in the university. So when I saw this, I thought, we're not far away from the giraffes now. We see the monkeys. And then Joel talks about getting close to the fireflies. They're near the lab. They see the markings on the posts. They get off the horse. They go in, and then they see that actually the lab's been cleared out, and there's a moving list. So everything's been moved. They find a map essentially where the fireflies have moved to. So they're not there anymore. Everything's been ransacked and taken. So they go back to square one. Joel's kind of like, well, we have to follow them. We've got to continue to do what we need to do. Just as they're about to leave, they hear a little noise, a little ruckus outside, and they see what I assume is raiders and pillagers. There's a group of guys walking past, and as they go outside, one of them jumps Joel. So they're just about to get on the horse. They're trying to get a quick getaway. One of them grabs Joel, and he just breaks the guy's neck. Joel just dismembers him, chucks him on the floor. Ellie spots at this point that the guy actually stabbed Joel as he's grabbed him from behind, stabbed him with what I think is like a screwdriver or some sort of tool, and he's got it stuck in his chest. Ellie's like, oh shit. Joel stupidly pulls it out. Word to the wise, it's never happened to me obviously, but I've seen so many medical videos online. if you get stabbed, if something gets impaled in you, don't pull it out. We're literally bags of water. What do you think is going to happen if you pull something sharp out of your body and you're full of water? You're going to bleed out. You're going to leak, which is essentially what this looks like. So Joel pulls it out. Blood starts pissing out of it. Ellie's like, oh shit. She tries to cover it, and then she chucks him on the horse and says, let's get out of here. Let's go. They manage to get away. The guys are trying to chase them, but obviously the horse just outpaces all of them, and they escape. And the next scene is Joel sat on the horse with Ellie, and he goes a bit peaky. He falls off the horse. She gets off, goes down to him on the ground. Is like, Joel, shit, you know, talk to me. He passes out, I assume through blood loss, shock, and all that kind of thing. Body temperature dropping because they're in the middle of nowhere. It's freezing cold. And she's like, Joel, you can't leave me. She gets really, really tearful. And this is the first time I think we really see Bella going the other way, away from comedy, away from Ellie, to being that compassionate person that actually now really does give a shit about Joel. She gets teary-eyed. Her sort of voice goes a little bit croaky, and she just says, you know, you can't leave me. I need you to guide me. I don't know where the fuck I'm going. How am I supposed to carry myself now? I'm fucked if you die, all this sort of thing. And Joel's just completely unconscious at this point. So it's quite emotional. It's quite a tear-jerking scene. And again, it just shows the absolute acting capacity of Bella Ramsey. I think she's amazing. I think she's done Ellie an absolute justice, and I love the little sprinkles of herself in her own sort of personality that she's brought to the character as well. And then the episode ends. So we just get the ending scene where the horse is just kind of stood there, and Ellie's trying to comfort Joel, trying to get him to come around. He's not responding. I'm not going to spoil anything if you haven't played the game, but 'tis good. 'Tis good. It ends there. So that is episode 6 done in the bag. Did I enjoy it? I absolutely loved it. Like I said at the beginning of the review, guys, it's not an episode that's packed of action. It's not an episode that you're going to come away thinking, oh my god, look at all the special effects, look at all this, you know, all that, the fight scenes and the kung fu and all that shit. Like, you don't get any of that in this episode. But I think, like I said, for an episode to be an hour long, and you can still come away feeling absolutely entertained just through dialogue, just through some of the set pieces, just through some of the comedy, the interactions with the characters, to do that for an hour and still keep your attention is amazing script writing. It's amazing storytelling, and I know we've already got the source material, but that is what we like. We do not want anything taken away from the source material if it is good. My only worry, like I said in the last episode, or episodic review, is where do we go for part 2? Stuff needs to be fixed for part 2, and I just hope it doesn't literally lift and paste part 2. Stuff needs to be fixed in that. Didn't shit on the story too much, but I think there's a lot that's gonna be a flip reverse of this series. If they go directly with part 2 like they have with this, we're in trouble, is my opinion. Hopefully they fix it. Hopefully they correct a few things, ready for what is hopefully going to be a solid series 2. But that is it. Done. If I was to give this episode a rating, solid 9 out of 10. I think, again, great acting. Love the interaction with the characters. It is all about Joel and Ellie. It's about how they bind together. It's about their relationship. It's about the scenarios that they're put in, how they survive. They are survivalists. It's about how they've got their own personal struggles outside of the virus. So Ellie's been alone. She's never been taught all the basic stuff. She's never been in a car. She's got dreams. She's just a kid. She's never had time to be a kid. Joel's processing Sarah, the death of his daughter, who was brutally, arguably murdered. Tess was killed. He's lost Bill. You know, there's so much stuff. Tommy sort of disappeared and he thought he was dead. And he's processing loss at a mass rate. And he's just trying to find himself. And when they're together, they are who they are supposed to be. They unlock each other almost. They become their inner selves, and they can only do that when they're together. When they're not together, they go back to the old Joel, the old Ellie. And it's amazing on-screen chemistry. It's great that the script is so powerful. The comedy is not tongue-in-cheek. It's funny. There's some times and scenes in some of these episodes where I've been outright laughing, like really laughing. I thought that's really good. That's great. Like I said, some of the key lines and the key things that were great from the game, such as the comic book with the pages being stuck together, has been directly lifted from it. So they haven't taken out all of the great stuff, all of the fun stuff. I think the one thing that could have made this episode a 10 out of 10 for me, like I said, was I wanted to see a bit more from the dam. I wanted to see a little bit of action, maybe a little bit of sprinkle of this across the episode. We do get, like I said, a little bit of a scuffle at the end. but it's not on the scale that you guys have seen before. But I think for me, it's still a very, very, very satisfying and strong episode. Like I said, to just carry through in terms of dialogue and just see the characters be themselves and just play out via the script and essentially rely on the script to make an hour entertaining is a hell of a feat, and I think they pulled it off easily. So episode 7 is next week. I don't know where it's going to go from here. There's a couple of things that are going to happen in the game that are potentially going to happen in the next episode. I think, like I said, we're getting episode 8 as the flashback DLC episode, Left Behind. We've got 9 episodes. This is 6. 7's going to be what I think is going to happen. Can't spoil it too much. And then that's going to move into where the Fireflies are. Episode 8 is the flashback DLC. And then episode 9 is going to be Joel discovering stuff. We're not going to spoil it, like I said, because there's loads of you that are now cracking into the game. And I would love to be in that position again where I'm re-experiencing the game fresh for the first time ever, because it's such an amazing experience. And to have a TV show running alongside it as well is super exciting. I recommend that you play the game first. You try and complete it before, you know, these episodes come out, because obviously you don't want to spoil it. Or just play the game and then watch the whole series through and try and avoid spoilers. But as I said, my episodic reviews are going to have warnings at the beginning of them if they have got spoilers in. So hopefully not too much surprise for you people that are still playing through the game and have yet to get to certain points. Continuing to love this series. I hope it continues to go places. Like I said, my only gripe was that we didn't get more of the dam. I think some of the scenes were a little bit rushed as well, especially with the bit where Joel and Ellie were on the horse leaving Tommy, going towards Wyoming. Some of those conversations could have been drawn out a little bit more in the episode and really give us that sense of connection. Although it was done well enough, I think. It didn't take anything away from it. And yeah, I'm just worried about season 2. That's my only gripe, my only concern at this point. But let me know in the comments what you think, guys. Would you have given it the same score? Were you disappointed, or did you enjoy it more so than I did? Let me know. Have you got the same worries, or are you absolutely feeling the pride on this one? I think it's a great TV series, like I said, and I'm going to continue to say it, hopefully, until the end of this series. This is, I feel, the strongest video game adaptation to a screen ever, and I hope it continues to go that way. But there we go. Thank you so much for checking out the video, guys. Remember to leave a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. Subscribe if you're brand new. And don't forget to check out some of the other episodic reviews. I have also got other TV and movie reviews on the channel, on the playlist, if you want to go and check that out. Stay tuned for more content, more live streams, more videos, more gaming, and more Last of Us. Until next week, until next time, until the next video or stream, I will see you again very soon. Take care, guys. Peace.